welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Ghost Ghosts with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be talking some Big Ten in a few minutes with one of our good friends, Greg Waddell. He does amazing work over at the Field of 68. He is one half of the Sleepers as well, along with Carter Elliott, who joins this podcast quite a bit. Both of them do amazing work. I know that they were doing their tour of Big Ten college venues last season, and he's going to be joining me in segment number 2 to talk about that very conference, the Big Ten. We are going to be taking a look at what to expect from the middle of the conference this year. Obviously, taking a look at those top teams in Michigan State, along with Purdue. He is a Michigan man, so we are going to be talking about the Wolverines and so much more. So lots of Big Ten chatter coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, we did see a few pieces of college basketball news, and we will get those to you guys and round that all up as we are now just 4 days away from the start of the college basketball season. I've posted this up a few times on my Twitter/X feed at GN_D1, but if you are looking for any specialized conference previews on this podcast here in the off season, I've already done a specialized conference preview for all 32 conferences. They are all wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. Just scroll down and they're all labeled by conference, so we've got you guys covered there. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Amy does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And this is good news for Texas. Caden Shedrick, he has now been cleared for basketball activities. Now, I would say temper your expectations perhaps for night number 1, him being out there on the court, but comes in from Virginia, where last season he was averaging about a block and a half per contest, 6 points per game. Not a guy that's going to go out there and stretch a floor or anything like that, but going to be a good rim protector, especially with Dylan Dessou dealing with injuries going back to the end of the NCAA tournament last year. So getting the 6'11" Shedrick out there, that's going to help Texas have a little bit more stability, have a little bit more size down low because they've got a nice backcourt with bringing in Max Asmus and company. So that is a big cog for Texas, and like I said, don't know if he's going to be suiting it up for their game against Incarnate Word, because Incarnate Word, this team is going to be just fine, but moving forward, that is going to be a key for this team. And then when it comes to more bad news in college basketball, and this goes to the SEC, we did see Jalen Cook get his waiver denied as he began his career at LSU, then played for Tulane for a pair of years, was trying to come back to LSU, and as right now it looks like he is not going to be suiting up this year, and that's bad news for an LSU bunch that could really use him in the backcourt. For Cook last year, he was a cooking out there in the American, 20 points per game, nearly 1.8 steals, nearly 5 assists, shot in the mid-30s from three-point range last season, but in his lone year at LSU, he actually did shoot closer to 44% from three-point range. And for LSU, there was just really no takeaways for them from season number 1. This is really a build-on-the-fly sort of job for an LSU team that has some talent on their roster. You bring in Carlos Stewart, who he should be good to go. Jordan Wright comes in from Vanderbilt, but this backcourt was really going to be relying upon Jalen Cook. I thought that he would have the ball in his hands quite a bit. Now you have to be thinking that with Carlos Stewart being a little bit more of an off-the-ball player, that perhaps Trey Hannibal is going to be handling the ball quite a bit. Will Baker is someone that at 7 feet tall is able to stretch the floor, but that leaves this team in a really rough circumstance. And for LSU and Matt McMahon, that really does put them behind the 8 ball. So that's not too terrific. Now, these are just rumors. I am not telling you that this is indeed a fact, but sounds like there was a little bit of a kerfuffle that happened in Louisville's practice on Wednesday as well. Apparently things are getting hot and heavy. Our good friend Trilly Donovan is tweeting that things are not going so great in Louisville. As we know, they lost an exhibition earlier in the week, and then Kenny Payne was blaming guys for not grabbing rebounds, even though he didn't put them in the game. So it's just not good, to say the least, if you are a fan of Louisville. And right now, with regards to college basketball, we are just trying to get you guys set for everything night number 1 wise. Didn't see a ton in college basketball on Wednesday, but we should be getting more updates with regards to injuries. We should be seeing whether or not guys are partaking in these exhibition matchups, so sort of know a little bit more of what we are going to be getting in night number 1, as we did see Jalen House of New Mexico be held out of his team's exhibition a night or two ago. That's something that I'm going to be watching out for, and those are the sorts of things that I'm going to be relaying to try to get us set for what is going to be a tremendous night number 1. And a man that does a tremendous job in terms of taking a look at the Big Ten, that would be Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media along with the Field of 68 coming up next. Going to be taking a look at the lay of the land out in the Midwest, and it is now the Northeast part of the country, and next year it's going to be exciting West as well, but we're going to be taking a look at all these Big Ten teams, the hierarchy in that conference, and so much more right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
Sports Betting Innovative Analytics has taken the guesswork and emotion out of sports betting to bring you an innovative and trustworthy resource to enhance your journey to becoming a winning player. With industry-leading money-back guarantee options backed by their sophisticated modeling, they want to introduce you to a system that's not widely seen or available to help you beat the bookmaker. Specializing in NBA, college basketball, and WNBA, your first week is always free. Get started at SBIA1.com today.
Lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by a fellow Greg, as Greg Waddell. He does great work over at the Field of 68 and Sleepers Media, and Greg does amazing work taking a look at the Big Ten, taking a look at the entire landscape of college basketball, and you're able to follow him over at GWizzy, the number 12 altogether, and for all that he does at Sleepers Media, as I know that he does the unscripted podcast and so much more that is just at Sleepers Media altogether. He and Carter Elliott do a great job on that front. And Greg, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, it's always great to be on the show. I think this is the longest that it's been since the first time you ever asked me on the show. Not that I'm counting days, but I would be lying if I said I don't have the calendar app synced to when you invite me on the show. So it's great to be back. I hope this is the first of many appearances, quite frankly. College Hoops is back. It's the best time of the year. From Greg to Greg, we're both just plugged into the college basketball betting world. And I know this is a bit of a holiday for us both. So I'm looking forward to celebrating with you tonight.
Absolutely. The games are back in 4 days and counting. So certainly those guest appearances, they are going to be ramping up now. So the calendar app, it is going to be getting quicker and quicker with regards to when you're going to be receiving those requests. You can bank on that. And Greg, we can bank on the Big Ten being very interesting this year. I know that you and Carter last season traveled to all the Big Ten venues, and as you know, it's just such a unique conference in general. And before we dive in on these teams, how would you quantify home court in the Big Ten as compared to, say, a different conference? Because, I mean, every single year, those of us in the betting landscape, we always know, fire up a whole bunch of Big Ten home teams in conference, and you're going to make a whole bunch of money, and it's just been that way for the longest of time.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I think it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but it's like these teams approach these games as if they're supposed to win them at home and they're supposed to lose them on the road. And that goes for almost everybody in the conference, unless you're a Purdue who's like 3 games clear of everybody else caliber-wise. At least they were last year. I don't know if that will be the case this year, but it's a fascinating dynamic because I'm not used to that. I mean, I'm a Big Ten guy through and through, but I just had never really experienced it in person until I actually made the road trips last year. It's a palpable thing. It was accentuated last season by the fact that there were so many teams that were similar in caliber. I mean, the second place team in the conference was Indiana, tied with Northwestern. They finished 12-8. And then you go all the way down to 10th place in the conference, was just 2 games behind second place. I mean, it was crazy how balanced the conference was. Because of that balance, if you were the home team, you suddenly had a massive advantage. It was just kind of wild to see play out. But I think this year, while I certainly think home court advantage will still matter, I think this year there will be some teams that emerge that transcend being the home team or the road team and just have a higher caliber than some of the teams in the middle of the pack. And I'm excited to talk it through with you.
I agree with you there. And I just still go back to that 2020-2021 season where we had no fans in the stands. And yet still, I mean, if you looked at the rankings of college basketball, it's Gonzaga, country mile number 1, Baylor clear of everyone at number 2, and then the number 3 team in college basketball was Minnesota at the BART. It was just absolutely hilarious. And that just goes to show the power of some of these home court advantages and some of these buildings out there in the Big Ten, as Greg Waddell does great work over at Sleepers Media and is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. But you mentioned it. I do think that there are 2 teams that are just head and shoulders above the rest in the Big Ten. I've got Purdue as my clear number 1, and I've got Michigan State as my clear number 2. And I do think that this year in the Big Ten, there might be a little bit more of a tiered system because you alluded to it. Last year, it was Purdue at number 1, and then everyone was like fighting for 2 through 10. It was absolutely hilarious. This year, I think that you've got a big 2. I think there's a good chance that Illinois could be able to emerge as that number 3 team. And then you've got a big 4 through 10, I would say, log jam. You can maybe go as far as 11 on that front. But I do think that you've got certainly a very clear top 2, perhaps a third as well in Illinois.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. The only pushback I would have on you is I think Purdue still clears. I really do. That's not just the Michigan fan in me speaking hatred onto the Michigan State Spartans, who I think are the second best team in this conference without a doubt. I still think they have some work to do to leap up towards Purdue's level. And nationally, these teams have been lumped together because it's Kansas, it's Duke, it's Purdue, it's Michigan State. That's the consensus top 4, however you want to rank them. Everybody has those as the top 4 teams in the country. I personally believe it should be a top 3. I think it should be Duke, Purdue, and Kansas, and then a little bit of a leap to Michigan State. Purdue returns essentially everybody. I mean, this team was so much better than everyone else last year in this conference. They return everybody, including the National Player of the Year, including their breakout sophomore backcourt, including a nice little freshman class that could chip in. Michigan State adds a lot. Don't get me wrong. I love their freshman class. I love Cohen Carr. I love Xavier Booker. I love Jeremy Fears. I love them all. But this is the same core that has lost 13 games in 3 straight seasons. We just saw it on display in the exhibition game. A.J. Hogarth, Tyson Walker, Jaden Akins, Malik Hall, Mady Sissoko. Those guys have been around. They're down 15-1 to Tennessee without their starting backcourt before the first media timeout. That's not an elite basketball team. The way that team makes a jump is if the freshmen earn on-court roles that can help the loaded backcourt. And at least from day one, Tom Izzo's not going to do that. He's going to play Malik Hall and Mady Sissoko 40, 45 minutes. So I still think Purdue should have some separation. I think Michigan State should be clearly at number 2. Both are national title contenders. And then you're right. Illinois looks like the team at 3, especially how they looked against Kansas. I mean, Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins, if those guys shoot 50% from 3 every single night, you're not beating Illinois. The thing is, they won't shoot 50% from 3 every single night, but they look deep. They look balanced. They look unselfish this year. That's new for a Brad Underwood team compared to the team he had last year. And then I do think there's a strong middle of the pack that includes some teams we'll probably talk about in a moment.
Absolutely. And you were alluding to some of those exhibition results that we were seeing. And how have you been gauging some of these? Because for some of the Big Ten teams, you mentioned Michigan State having a little bit of a rough go of it early on before finding their sea legs against Tennessee. We did see Purdue lose in a thriller against Arkansas, but I really don't make a lot out of the final score, but I do make something out of the rotations that we're seeing right now. You mentioned it with Illinois. It does seem like there's going to be some depth. That's a good thing. I mean, it's always nice to be able to win the exhibition, but I made less out of the final score and a little bit more out of the fact that there are going to be a lot of players that are going to be able to give Illinois some key minutes. I'm not sure how you've been taking these exhibitions, these scrimmages, but I think that those are the big keys to be looking for.
Yeah, I will tell you right now, Greg, I am a guy that is going to react to scrimmages. It just is how I am wired. It's how I like to watch and interpret basketball. I respect people who have this opinion, but I am not a guy who's going to sit here and watch a 40-minute game be played with a coach who runs this like it's a real game and then remove myself from it and say that didn't matter. Let's just shrug it off. Nothing happened. As a basketball fan, the way I watch basketball is if I see something happen on the basketball court, I think it's noteworthy enough to talk about and draw conclusions from. And if I'm wrong a week from now, we can reevaluate. That's how I approach the game. But for right now, what we have is these exhibitions. And like it or not, I mean, Illinois, Kansas, you can't tell me if you watch that game from start to finish, you can't tell me that those two coaches didn't manage that game like it was the national championship game. Both coaches played their starters 30 to 35 minutes each. They were trying to win that game, and Illinois won the game, and that's noteworthy. It's incredibly impressive that Brad Underwood's team went toe-to-toe with the AP number 1 preseason team in the country and beat them. Contrary to that, Purdue and Michigan State took an L, both to very good teams. I mean, I think Tennessee's a top 6 team in the country. I think Arkansas is in the 10 to 15 range, and that was a road game for Purdue with a crowd. I think both those teams are good. That's not a result to be embarrassed by, but it's notable for the reason you said, the rotations. And from a Michigan State perspective, they started Malik Hall and Madi Sissoko, and they played those guys twice as much as they played Cohen Carr and Xavier Booker. And this is a real stat. I mean, Xavier Booker and Cohen Carr in 24 minutes were plus 31, and Malik Hall and Madi Sissoko in double the minutes were minus 32. It was a 1-point loss. That's a real stat. That's something to monitor going forward. On the Purdue side of things, they started Lance Jones. That's a surprise. I mean, Ethan Morton got a lot of starts last year. Mason Gillis got a lot of starts last year. Both guys are coming off the bench now. Lance Jones is a 6'1" guard that shot 28% from 3 last year at a lower level. He was 2 for 11 from the floor in his first game in a Purdue uniform. That doesn't bode well to me. There was Miles Colvin hype. There was Brian Waddell hype. There was Camden Heide hype. None of those guys appear more ready than Lance Jones. And look, it's day 1. What matters is being good on day 30. But for day 1, there's some things we didn't expect to see from Purdue and from Michigan State right now. I think it's noteworthy for sure. I think Illinois has worked their way into the conversation for one of the best teams in this conference.
Yep, and I do think that looking at those rotations is big, and you were alluding to some of the context as well, because there are so many scrimmages that you could tell that, as you were alluding to in Kansas versus Illinois, lots of juice there. Meanwhile, you'll notice some of these scrimmages where it's like, and you got 5 walk-ons that are in the starting rotation. That's one where I think you probably want to be tempering expectations when you know that that is not going to be the rotation that you see night number 1 as well. So I do think that there's a lot of ways that we should be taking a look at these, and certainly not one size fits all when it comes to all of them, as Greg Waddell does great work over at Sleepers Media in the field of 68, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And with regards to more of those middle teams in the Big Ten, I think that it's fair to put a pair of schools that we are very familiar with, Michigan along with Wisconsin, sort of in that fold. I would put Maryland towards the upper half. If I had to pick it right now, I think that Maryland, they should be threatening to be a top 4 team. I've got some question marks there, but you know what? You do bring back some senior leadership with Dante Scott and company. I think that that's going to be very big. But how do you take a look at really the middle of the Big Ten? Because I do think that we're going to be staring at a landscape once again where it might be a revolving door for some of these teams like Maryland, like Michigan, Wisconsin, what have you, for being on the fringes of the top 25 and trying to threaten those big 2/big 3 teams.
Yeah, it's take your pick. It really is. It's going to be a jumbled middle of the pack for sure. The difference is, I think last year there wasn't really any separation. I think from 3 through 12, I think it was essentially you're playing the same team every night, just a different flavor. I think this year there will be some tiers to the middle of the pack. And obviously we need to see it play out. But my suspicion would be that Maryland, that Ohio State, that Wisconsin are some of those teams in the middle that could emerge as tier 2 in this conference. If Purdue and Michigan State are tier 1, Illinois and maybe 2 or 3 other teams are going to be tier 2. And I think there's reason to believe in upside for all 3 of those. I am higher on the first 2 I mentioned, Maryland and Ohio State. I think Maryland has a chance to have the best backcourt in this conference, if not the best backcourt in the country, quite frankly. If Jameer Young is who he was last season, and Deshaun Harris-Smith is an instant impact, one-and-done type guy, which I think is a 50-50 chance. I really like his game. I think he can score at all 3 levels. I don't think he's going to be asked to do too much because they have the front court guys, they have the point guard. Maryland's going to make it pretty easy on him. I think that can be a potent duo. Just teams in this conference don't have answers for. So I would place my chips on Maryland to emerge. I think Ohio State's headed for a bounce back year. Chris Holtmann is not a bad coach. Last year was a horrendous year. He is too good of a coach to have that happen again. And he's got talent. Not that talent was a problem last year, but some of the guys that were talented for him last year had a really negative impact across all elements of the game of basketball, whether it's shot selection, whether it's defensive effort, whether it's leadership. Those guys are gone. And he replaced them with some talented veteran types. Dale Bonner's a guy that's coming from Baylor that I think can play and have a presence in the locker room. Jamison Battle, yes, he's been on bad teams his whole career. He's also been an all Big Ten player before. And now he's kind of the forgotten transfer that's going to show up and be really good. I think both of those two teams should expect to finish above 500, finish in the top 5 or 6 in this conference. I mentioned Wisconsin. They've got veterans everywhere. A.J. Storr was a huge addition. I don't personally believe they have the ceiling of the two teams I just mentioned, Maryland and Ohio State, but they're going to be right in the mix for upper level in this conference, and a team I won't be surprised at all to find themselves in the NCAA tournament with a chance to get to the second weekend.
And with Wisconsin, when you don't score literally in your final 8+ minutes of the season, you need to go out there and get a little bit of shooting. They did that with bringing in A.J. Storr, so I was very happy to see that. But I do agree with you with Wisconsin. They feel like a high floor, low ceiling sort of team, unless if Chucky Hepburn could be able to take those strides forward, which he just to this point has not been able to and has been quite inconsistent, to say the least. And we got to talk a little bit about your main school in Michigan, because I think that they're one of the more intriguing teams in the conference as well, because I do feel like the Olivier Kamwa transfer went a little bit under the radar. And as you know as well as I do, the team has been without Juwan Howard for quite a bit of the offseason as well. It's been Phil Martelli running things while Juwan Howard has been going through some health battles. But how do you evaluate this Michigan team right now with their backcourt really being headlined by Doug McDaniel, but also the possibility of getting some contributions from Jalen Llewellyn this year with another year in the system?
Yeah, they're a total mystery on paper. They really are. And I think they have gone under the radar, rightfully so. Because when you are a program that has underachieved with top 10 level expectations for 2 years running, and I know they made a Sweet 16 2 years ago, but in the regular season, they really underachieved. And then last year was a total disaster from start to finish. They still put 2 guys into the top 15 of the NBA draft. No other program in the country could say that. But outside of that, they didn't do anything at the college basketball level. And now their head coach is gone, right? It's a sad situation all around. I feel for Juwan Howard. I pray and I hope that he gets better, and I'm sure he will. All the signs point to him being able to return at some point this season. But it's a tough spot to be in because, quite frankly, Juwan Howard's coaching for his job. He really is. The last thing that Juwan Howard did when healthy was sign Caleb Love. Caleb Love's in Tucson. This is the same mistake Juwan Howard has made 3 consecutive years that has hurt his roster. He's prioritized all his transfer time on a guy that can't clear admissions at the University of Michigan. So it's kind of like the guy who created this mess isn't even here to deal with the mess this offseason. And I say that as a fan of the program that hopes for the best for Juwan Howard, both on the court and off the court. But what they're left with, though, is definitely going under the radar because Olivier Kamwa and Terrace Reed, on paper, in my opinion, is the second best front court in this conference. And it's only behind Purdue because they have the National Player of the Year. Like, those two guys are good basketball players. Olivier Kamwa was torching people in the NCAA tournament last year. Like, he's a 23-year-old dude that turned down professional opportunities to come play in Ann Arbor. Terrace Reed, breakout guy. We saw him beast the Michigan State front court to win a game single-handedly in the final 8 minutes last year in Ann Arbor. Like, he's going to be a breakout guy. He can move his feet at an elite level for a big man. The offensive side is the question, but physically he's right there. And then you got Doug McDaniel, who was thrown into the fire last year, but that's the best thing that could have happened to him when projecting to this season because he's going to be ready. He just is. I like Michigan. I really do. And I'm not saying that from a fan perspective. I think this team's top 4 is close to that level of the Maryland, Wisconsin, Ohio State group I just mentioned, where you throw Damari Burnett in with the 3 names I just mentioned. On paper, that's a great defensive team. It's a top 10 defensive team in the country on paper. They just need to find ways to score the basketball. And between Doug McDaniel and Olivier Kamwa, I believe they will be able to do that. Depth is a huge question. We don't know what they have off the bench. They only brought in 1 freshman this season. The story is George Washington III was killing Marquette's backcourt in the secret scrimmage, and Michigan won that game. So we need to see it in person before we fully believe it. Out of that whole mess of teams that Ken Pom and Torvik project to go 10-10 or 9-11. There's a big heap of them. I would place a bet on Michigan to be the team that emerges. I really would.
And with Michigan and everything that they've been going through with Juwan Howard, it does help that they've got, in my opinion, just one of the best associate head coaches in all of college basketball, and Phil Martelli, a guy that, if you remember 2 decades ago, led St. Joe's to an undefeated regular season. This is not like some slouch that has sort of been like a defensive coordinator for like 2 years or anything like that. This is a bona fide coach that has gotten good teams in the NCAA tournament and has put plenty of guys in the NBA draft. Also, another side note, I just still cannot help but have a little bit of a chuckle when I hear George Washington III, because that means that there were 2 generations of gentlemen that were named George Washington in front of him. So that always just does give me a little bit of a laugh, but I'm right there with you. I do think that Michigan, they have a little bit of a low floor, but I do think that they've got a high ceiling and a team that can really pop this season. And you always make this podcast pop, Greg. You do amazing work over there at Sleepers Media. You do a great job over at the Field of 68. You, much like myself, all juiced up for the upcoming college basketball season. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Hoops, I appreciate it. It's always fun to be here. It's going to be a very exciting season over in Sleepers Media World. This summer, we flipped from doing once-a-week episodes. We're now doing 5 days a week episodes every Monday through Friday. You can catch us on our YouTube channel. You can get us on Apple and Spotify. It's at Sleepers Media on social media. Sleepers Media is the name of the YouTube channel. Really, our goal is to be the most consistent, the most entertaining podcast you can find in the college basketball world. We're going to bring guests of all types on throughout the season. We're going to be breaking down everything in Big Ten land and beyond. Hopefully, we will have some more on-site news for you. We're not running back College Hoops to Go. That was quite an undertaking, and there's a little one at home in the Waddell household these days, so we're going to try to keep it a little easier. But we will have some on-site content this year I'm looking forward to unveiling. You can also catch us on the Bleacher Report app, where we just did a live room today for the first time. There should be more of that coming. So, Greg, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure, my friend. I'm looking forward to the season.
It's always tremendous to be able to get you aboard, and hopefully by year's end, we get to see a little Waddell and a little Michigan jersey. That's something that I think needs to be on the bucket list, and Greg, he does absolutely amazing work taking a look at this tremendous game of college basketball. Lends amazing insights. You can tell that he, much like myself, absolutely loves Midwest and Big Ten college basketball, and it's always a pleasure to get him aboard. A big thanks to Greg for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Juden_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, the me does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. We are just 4 days away from the start of the college basketball season. We are almost there. Like I said at the top, we've got specialized conference previews for every single conference, so we're all squared away there. Just in these final few days, we're taking a look at who's all going to be eligible, ineligible to begin the year, injuries to take note of, making sure that we've got our T's crossed, our I's dotted, so that way we're able to make as much money as humanly possible starting night number 1 on that glorious Monday. And once we do get into it, it's only D1 versus D1 teams. Do be mindful there, just because when you've got games against like D2, D3 games, they just don't make the betting board. But for every D1 versus D1 game, I've got you covered with picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.